beautiful friends. Welcome back to 365 Days of Love and Miracles with A Course in Miracles. My name is Arlene Geres, and I am so glad that you are here. Please remember to listen right until the very end, because we have a special treat for you. And if you enjoyed today's video, please click like and subscribe down below, because this helps others to find us on YouTube. Today's lesson is lesson number 134. Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. This is one of my favorite lessons. Forgiveness is a key concept in the Course. We cannot experience true oneness with God and all of creation if we are holding a resentment against anyone. And we cannot hold a resentment against someone else and not hold a resentment against ourselves. When we forgive someone else, we also forgive ourselves. We are all one. I'm going to put this crazy dog down now that that other dog has left. Let's read today's lesson. Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Let us review the meaning of forgiveness, for it is apt to be distorted and to be perceived as something that entails an unfair sacrifice of righteous wrath, a gift unjustified and undeserved, and a complete denial of the truth. In such a view, forgiveness must be seen as mere eccentric folly, and this course appears to rest salvation on a whim. This is a great description of forgiveness as seen through the ego's eyes. The ego would say that forgiveness is a mere folly. It is an unfair sacrifice of righteous wrath. We have this wrath. We deserve to hold on to our anger because of what somebody else did. But none of that is true. The real truth is, I cannot hold you in jail without keeping myself captive as well. The real truth is that when I forgive you, I forgive myself. When I free you, I free myself. Let's read on. This twisted view of what forgiveness means is easily corrected when you can accept the fact that pardon is not asked for what is true. It must be limited to what is false. It is irrelevant to everything except illusions. Truth is God's creation, and to pardon that is meaningless. All truth belongs to Him, reflects His laws, and radiates His love. Does this need pardon? How can you forgive the sinless and eternally benign? If we are truly seeing through God's holy vision, then we won't even notice those slights, those wrongs that people have done to us in the past. We will see everyone through God's eyes of love, and there will be no need for forgiveness. However, because none of us are there 100% of the time, and we cannot see completely and perfectly with Christ's vision, then we need this concept of forgiveness. But the Course does tell us that forgiveness is actually false, because the Course wants us to learn how to see completely through God's eyes. That is a lofty goal, my friends. I have not reached it, but I can tell you that the things that used to bother me no longer do. And I kind of laugh to myself when something happens, someone does or says something that used to just make me crazy, and I would hold on to this grievance for sometimes days, weeks, or months, or even years. Now I could just laugh at it and see that it really doesn't matter. I no longer need to make someone else wrong in order to make myself feel right. Let's read on. The major difficulty that you find in genuine forgiveness on your part is that you still believe you must forgive the truth and not illusions. You conceive as pardon as a vain attempt to look past what is there, to overlook the truth in an unfounded effort to deceive yourself by making an illusion true. This twisted viewpoint but reflects the hold that the idea of sin retains as yet upon your mind as you regard this. In other words, there are always certain people that we believe do not belong in this place of oneness with God and all of creation. My ego wants to pick and choose. These are the good guys. I can put these good guys over into God's camp. But then there are people like Hitler that simply will never belong there. A Course in Miracles says that thought is an ego thought. Even Hitler, my friends, belongs in God's kingdom. Yes, indeed, his actions were truly horrific. My husband and I had the opportunity to visit Auschwitz and to actually see the camps. Words cannot describe what a hellish place that is. Even more hellish it must have been when the Jews had to live and die there. There is nothing in our humanity that is able to forgive the depth of depravity of what Hitler visited upon the earth. And he's only one example. There are many, many people who have visited unspeakable horrors on other people. And yet, the Course tells us that even these people are part of God and part of all of creation. They did not realize that their true essence also was love. They are part of God. We are trying to move the needle here, folks, when we more and more accept that all people are part of God and part of all creation. We don't get to pick and choose who belongs in God's camp. Then we can let go that heavy weight of sorrow and grievance that we might hold against anyone. We can simply let it go. Let's read on. Because you think your sins are real, you look on pardon as deception. For it is impossible to think of sin as true and not believe forgiveness is a lie. Thus is forgiveness really but a sin like all the rest. It says the truth is false and smiles on the corrupt as if they were as blameless as the grass, as white as snow. It is delusional in what it thinks it can accomplish. It would see as right the plainly wrong, the loathsome as the good. We are not talking about denial. A Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness. It is not talking about the forgiveness of the ego, in which we just whitewash over somebody's blackness. No, it is saying that sin is not real in God's world. None of this happens in the world of the Spirit. When we learn to see through God's eyes, we won't see this either. This doesn't mean that we don't get involved in human rights issues, that we don't try and help our fellow human beings, because suffering is very real for people living in these human bodies. In fact, the opposite is true. When we're walking in God's light and we only see love, now we're in a powerful position to pull people out of the darkness into the light, where there is no need for forgiveness, where all of us are seen as unblemished, as perfect in God's sight. Let's keep reading. Pardon is no escape in such a view. It merely is a further sign that sin is unforgivable, at best to be concealed, denied, or called another name. For pardon is a treachery to truth. Guilt cannot be forgiven. If you sin, your guilt is everlasting. Those who are forgiven from the view their sins are real are pitifully mocked and twice condemned, first by themselves for what they think they did, and once again by those who pardon them. This is such an important section because so many of us suffer with terrible guilt and shame. We believe that whatever we did was so terrible that nothing is ever going to make it right. God cannot forgive them because they are so deplorable. I am here to tell you that all of that is a big fat lie. We do not have to think with the eyes of the ego 1 second longer. We can let all of these go. Our sins are not real. In God's world, there is no such word as sin. There is only love. Let's read on. It is sin's unreality that makes forgiveness natural and wholly sane, a deep relief to those who offer it, a quiet blessing where it is received. It does not countenance illusions, but collects them lightly, with a little laugh, and gently lays them at the feet of truth. And there they disappear entirely. So let's take this whole big backpack of lies that we've been carrying about ourselves and other people and lay them at God's feet. There, they just completely disappear. They're simply illusions. They are not real. We can let them go. Isn't that great news? Let's read on. Forgiveness is the only thing that stands for truth in the illusions of the world. It sees their nothingness and looks straight through the thousand forms in which they may appear. It looks on lies, but it is not deceived. It does not need the self-accusing shrieks of sinners mad with guilt. It looks on them with quiet eyes and merely says to them, "My brother, what you think is not the truth." Forgiveness is the bridge that takes us across from the world of illusions to the world of truth. It does not exist in God's world. It is literally a bridge that carries us from the world of the ego, the world of thinking that we have sinned or that others have sinned, takes us across to the world where it simply does not exist. There is only love in God's world. Let's keep reading. The strength of pardon is its honesty, which is so uncorrupted that it sees illusions as illusions, not as truth. It is because of this that it becomes the undeceiver in the face of lies, the great restorer of simple truth. By its ability to overlook what is not there, it opens up the way to truth, which has been blocked by dreams of guilt. Now are you free to follow in the way your true forgiveness opens up to you. For if one brother has received this gift of you, the door is open to yourself. When we forgive one person, the door to forgiveness opens up to us. If we want to hold on tight to all of our resentments, we will not receive forgiveness ourselves. Let's keep reading. There is a very simple way to find the door to true forgiveness and perceive it open wide in welcome. When you feel that you are tempted to accuse someone of sin in any form, do not allow your mind to dwell on what you think he did, for that is self-deception. Ask instead, would I accuse myself of doing this? If I accuse you of something, I naturally accuse myself. One of the ways that has kept me from judging another person is I ask myself, have I ever done this or have I thought of doing it? And the answer is almost always yes. This keeps me humble. I am not in a position to judge anyone. And when I do, I am also judging myself. Let's keep reading. Thus will you see alternatives for choice in terms that render choosing meaningful, and keep your mind as free of guilt and pain as God Himself intended it to be, and as it is in truth. It is but lies that would condemn. In truth is innocence, the only thing there is. Forgiveness stands between illusions and the truth, between the world you see and that which lies beyond, between the hell of guilt and heaven's gate. Across this bridge, as powerful as love, which laid its blessing on it, are all dreams of evil and of hatred and attack brought silently to truth. They are not kept to swell and bluster and to terrify the foolish dreamer who believes in them. He has been gently wakened from his dream by understanding what he thought he saw was never there, and now he cannot feel that all escape has been denied to him. Let's talk about it. In truth is innocence the only thing there is. All these dreams that we have had of hatred and attack and evil, these are but illusions. This lesson is telling us over and over and over again, and it's not going to be over today. This message comes back to us in different words, in different forms throughout the entire course. Anytime that we are feeling guilt and shame about ourselves or that we are judging another person, we are caught up in the world of illusion. The Course wants us to see this because when we see it, we can move over into seeing ourselves and others through God's eyes of love. Let's keep reading. He does not have to fight to save himself. He does not have to kill the dragons which he thought pursued him, nor need he erect the heavy walls of stone and iron doors he thought would make him safe. He can remove the ponderous and useless armor made to chain his mind to fear and misery. His step is light, and as he lifts his foot to stride ahead, a star is left behind to point the way to those who follow him. Isn't that a beautiful thought? I'll never look at stars the same way. Every single step that we move toward God's truth, we leave a star to light the way to others who also walk this path with us. This is the miracle. We do not walk this road alone. We are God's shining light, meant to show others the way. Let's keep reading. Forgiveness must be practiced, for the world cannot perceive its meaning, nor provide a guide to teach you its beneficence. There is no thought in all the world that leads to any understanding of the laws it follows, nor the thought that it reflects. It is as alien to the world as is your own reality, and yet it joins your mind with the reality in you. Let's talk about it. When we look through the ego's eyes, we cannot see the true meaning of forgiveness. We can only see what we've already talked about as the ego's way of just whitewashing over darkness. That is not what A Course in Miracles means when it talks about forgiveness. The world cannot perceive its meaning, nor provide a guide to teach you its beneficence. I can hardly say that word. I had to look up the meaning. It means charitable and compassionate. The world cannot teach us this. Only God can teach us this. Let's keep reading. Today we practice true forgiveness, that the time of joining be no more delayed, for we would meet with our reality in freedom and in peace. Our practicing becomes the footsteps lighting up the way for all our brothers who will follow us to the reality we share with them. That this may be accomplished, let us give a quarter of an hour twice today and spend it with the guide who understands the meaning of forgiveness and who was sent to us to teach it. Let us ask of him, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Then choose one brother as he will direct and catalog his sins as one by one they cross your mind. Be certain not to dwell on any one of them, but realize that you are using his offenses but to save the world from all ideas of sin. Briefly consider all the evil things you thought of him, and each time ask yourself, would I condemn myself for doing this? Let him be freed from all the thoughts you had of sin in him, and now you are prepared for freedom. If you have been practicing thus far in willingness and honesty, you will begin to sense a lifting up, a lightening of weight across your chest, a deep and certain feeling of relief. The time remaining should be given to experiencing the escape from all the heavy chains you sought to lay upon your brother, but were laid upon yourself. Forgiveness should be practiced through the day, for there will still be many times when you forget its meaning and attack yourself. When this occurs, allow your mind to see through the illusion as you tell yourself, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Would I accuse myself of doing this? I will not lay this chain upon myself. In everything you do, remember this. No one is crucified alone, and yet no one can enter heaven by himself. Oh my. As always, the practice is the most important part of the lesson. If we just take all of this information in, it does not do a single thing for us. Remember, it's 5% information, 95% application. So let's talk about our practices for today. The first thing that we are told is that we are learning to practice true forgiveness. Forgiveness as God describes it. The purpose of forgiveness is that we experience this oneness with God and all of creation. We want to experience oneness with the person that we are holding a grievance against. When we do this, we are showing the way for all those who follow us. That's a very important part of every single lesson that we do in A Course in Miracles. Our practice sessions, first thing in the morning, last thing just before we go to sleep, we want to give at least a quarter of an hour to the practice. We start our practice with the idea for today: let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Then we choose one person to focus on, maybe someone that we've been holding a grievance against. Take out your journal and write down all the sins that you see in them. Then go back to the list and one by one, look at each thing and say, would I condemn myself for doing this? I'm assuming that none of us here have ever had the mind of Hitler. But have we at least thought of hurting another person? Of course we have. Every single person has. Now, I cannot condemn one without condemning another. I cannot condemn you without condemning myself. So let's do that one by one by one at each of the sins that you have listed. The third thing that we are asked to do is to go back to that list and one by one simply erase them. You can literally use your eraser and erase them, or you can just scribble them out. They no longer exist. We have moved our brother from looking at them through the eyes of the ego to looking at them through eyes of love. They are one with us and all of creation. They are one with God. We are one with God. For our practice sessions throughout the day, every time an unforgiving thought comes to mind, maybe someone does or says something and it just doesn't fit right, we want to come back to this place. We want to silently say to ourselves, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Would I accuse myself of doing this? I will not lay this chain upon myself. We don't want to take on the heavy burdens of guilt and shame whenever we judge another person. We simply learn to recognize it and to stop ourselves before we take on this attitude of judgment toward another person. When we do that, we lay these heavy chains upon ourselves so we can stop in the moment, lay those heavy chains down, free the other person, and free ourselves. In everything we do, remember this: no one is crucified alone, and yet no one can enter heaven by himself. We enter into heaven hand in hand, and most of all, we want to bring along our brothers who we may have been holding a grievance against. Thanks so much for listening right until the end, my friends. If you enjoyed today's video, please share the love. Tell others about these videos. Encourage them to start at lesson 1 and only do 1 lesson a day. Are you ready for our special treat?
Thank you to Susan Edge for this video of the dolphins playing in the bay.
Let me perceive forgiveness as it is. Have a blessed day, my friends. I love you.